Steve, thank you for coming on to the Piscari Insights Masters of Negotiation series. I'm delighted to have you as a guest. Thank you very much indeed.
Fantastic to be here.
And I believe, so although you said that I can call you Steve, you're also called Captain Hoff. Where does that come from?
So that is my nickname in Silicon Valley. It came from my gamer handle because I play a lot of games.
Oh, really? Okay. That's your kind of, when you get some relaxation time, that's what you do.
Which is very seldom these days.
I can imagine. So on that point, just kind of like tell our kind of viewers and listeners, what do you do in your kind of life?
So I am a serial entrepreneur. I founded 2 bootstrapped startups, 3 venture-funded startups in Silicon Valley. I am also the CEO of Founderspace, which is a global startup incubator and accelerator. We work all over the world. We work in 22 countries.
Wow.
I am also a venture capitalist, and I am an author. And my most recent book is called Surviving a Startup, which is basically everything I've been through and everything that I've learned from the hundreds of entrepreneurs I have brought through the Founderspace program.
Fantastic. And again, we'll remind people at the end, but they can buy that on Amazon?
Yes, Amazon, everywhere else.
And what's the book called again? Just remind people.
The book is called Surviving a Startup, and it's published by HarperCollins.
Perfect. So, you very kindly agreed to come on to our series about the first time you raised venture funding in Silicon Valley. Is that kind of correct?
That is correct. And I have a story of negotiation, a brutal story. You know, Mike, I wish I knew you then, because I could have done a much better job throughout the entire process if I had known you then and listened to, all your advice. But I had to learn the hard way.
Excellent. So, and this is all about really kind of like the hard lessons learned and coming out the other side. So I think let's kind of start off with, what was the kind of most dramatic, crazy, terrifying thing that happened to you on that kind of journey? Just some snippets.
Some snippets. Well, basically, it was my first venture-funded startup. So at the beginning, of course, we had no venture capital, and we were out there working really hard. We managed to close a deal on our own, bootstrapping it with MTV, Viacom, the big media giant, for our platform, which was an interactive TV platform. And then we went out to raise capital. And I didn't know anybody. It was really, really hard. So we didn't really understand what it was to raise capital, what you had to do, how you had to negotiate deals. So we went to a bunch of different VCs, really had trouble getting through to them, finally got through to this big VC firm in Los Angeles. It had all these luminaries on its board. Michael Milken, the junk bond king, the former president of Sega, a huge Hollywood executives. So they knew what they were doing, especially when it came to negotiating. We didn't know what we were doing. So first of all, we worked out a deal with them because we'd landed Viacom and we were about to launch our big product, our platform with Viacom. We landed a deal with them where they basically had committed to $5 million at a $20 million pre, which back then was an incredibly good first round valuation. Even today, It's decent. But at that time, it was phenomenal. So we were working with them, and we negotiated. We had a lawyer, a decent lawyer. And when I get a lawyer, this is one of my rules. And this is one thing we did right. So we got a lawyer who really understood the business terms. So this is very rare. Like most of the lawyers I work with, they're overly defensive. They're covering their own butt. They're not really worried about getting the deal done. This lawyer we could actually go to, and it was one of the fortunate things that we did. The lawyer could actually tell us, look, you're going to take some business risk here, just go with it. Or this term isn't worth fighting for. You might think it's worth fighting for, but honestly, it's not worth it. So we had that counsel, and we went back and forth with their lawyer, and they had one of these tough Hollywood lawyers, which are the worst. And, $60,000 later, we worked out a contract.
Just describe, by the way, Steve, just talk about that. that kind of like those tough Hollywood lawyers, just kind of like characterize, no names, but just characterize kind of how do they come across? How do they approach the table?
They're sharks. They want to get everything they can. Like, that's
Okay.
what they do. You know, they don't really think of it as a win-win situation. They're looking to get everything they can. But our lawyer was excellent. And she really told us what to fight for, what not to fight for. And she held her ground on the things we should hold our ground. And we trusted her. So we got through that negotiation, ran up a big legal bill for us. $60K was a lot for us, especially at the time. We were basically, all our capital had gone in. We got $350,000 from MTV, and all of it had gone into this project. So the $60K she was giving us as basically she would get paid back when we closed the deal. So we didn't have to pay her up front because we couldn't. So we ran it up in debt, and basically she closed that deal. I mean, she got everything laid out. We had it all set. We went back to them, and we said, okay, let's sign. Mm-hmm. You know what they said to us? Being the Hollywood sharks they were, they said...
I can imagine, but no.
They said, we're going to sign the deal once your product launches, which is only 2 months away. We needed the money then. We were like, 2 months away? What are you doing to us? So we said, okay.
Payroll? Did you have enough money to make payroll?
We barely had enough to make payroll. So we said, we will, we didn't have leverage at this point. So we said, okay, we will go out and we will wait until the product launches. The product is coming through the pipe. Now, MTV is really worried because this is the first time they've really done a big deal with a startup. It was the early days of startups. It was like the 1990s. They didn't do startups. And the president of the senior vice president of MTV, his job was on the line. He was like, this product better work. And, we had a tiny team. We had 3 engineers and 3, other people doing design, art, development, everything else for this product. MTV blasted ads out across the entire internet, like for and on their TV show, like everywhere. So they expected huge volume. We launched the product. Now, when we launched it, literally the product went down. After a couple minutes, it crashed. Wow. The senior vice president of MTV was on the phone to me, cursing at me, like, how could you let this happen? I got on the phone with our engineers, and I was like, what's going on? Well, apparently, it wasn't our system. We were under a denial of service attack. All that marketing they did attracted trolls. Yeah. This troll was bombarding us, brought down our service. Our engineers quickly blocked the IP addresses, and we are back up. Right. So everything ran smoothly. We launched. It was a huge success. All that stress was off our shoulders. I go back to the venture capitalists. It's like, we launched.
Steve, just pause a second, 1 second. So when the VC said, launch your product, and then come back when you've launched, in terms of the kind of criteria for success, the objective criteria, where everyone would say, yes, that was a successful launch. Were there any? Did you agree any criteria?
No. This was a mistake.
Okay.
But so we wouldn't, how would we define success? You're right. We could argue over it. But clearly this was a success. I mean, the show went fantastic.
We had gone live. So yeah,
everything.
It should be a success.
A glowing success. So we go back to them. And they were like, okay, let's do the deal now. Now, the thing is, they knew we were out of money. They knew we had spent all our money. So being the Hollywood sharks they were, they said...
And did you have a BATNA? At that point, at that moment, when you went back to them, did you have 2 or 3 others waiting in the wings?
That was my critical mistake. We had nobody else, no backup, no other alternatives. We didn't know. We trusted them. Like, this was our first VC deal. We thought, and I was naive, and I thought this thing would go. So they knew, because we hadn't told them we had any backup. If we were going to do it right, early on, I would have told them when we had got the contract done, I would have said, no, you either sign it now or walk away. Like, we have other people interested. And I would have been going out to... multiple partners at the same time so that I knew we could play them off one another. I didn't know any of this.
But this was
So
30 years ago, Steve. I mean, like 30 years ago when you did this first deal, clearly your experience now is colossal. But a lot of people out there, they're in the same position. They don't know. And there's also that it's the first time you've done it. It's the excitement of the deal. These VCs can be quite scary. You've got sharks there. You've got all the great, I mean, the Hollywood characters are all coming into play as you play out this deal scenario. I think it's very common. Happens all the time.
Exactly. So we had made a bunch of mistakes. They come back to us and they said, look, 20 million we thought was too high. Well, you should have told us that months ago. Yeah. What we want is we'll do the deal, but we'll do it at half the valuation we promised. Whoa. 10 million. Painful, right? Painful. They're getting twice as good a deal because they know we're trapped. And to make matters worse, it is literally right before Thanksgiving. And everybody in America knows that between Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's dead. Even after Christmas. I mean, we would have to, everybody goes home. All the VCs. Nobody's funded.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we are at a point now where we can literally take their money at half the valuation or walk away and we don't know what's going to happen.
Whoa.
So we talked it over.
Yeah.
And what did we decide? Well, we decided if these guys are going to screw us like this at the last minute, do we want them on our board of directors? Do
Absolutely.
we want them as our partners? And we decided, no, we do not want to be in business with them. So we said, screw you, we're walking. We're walking. And we walked right off a cliff. It was really torturous. So for the next month, I couldn't get through to any venture capitalists. We were in a world of pain. We were invited to go to CES and give a big presentation.
Yep.
We went, but we had to downgrade to the sleaziest hotel in Las Vegas. It was awful because we had no money. So you can imagine,
rather than the plane, exactly
right. And we were so depressed we could barely get out of bed. So my partner and I. So it was just torture. We get back to Silicon Valley. Now I'd learned something. I learned how brutal, why they call them vulture capitalists. Like yes. They will, if they see weakness, if they smell weakness, they will tear you apart and leave no scraps. So I'm out there. I actually managed to get through to the president of Macromedia. And Macromedia, okay. For those of you who don't remember, they're now Adobe. They basically merged with Adobe and became Adobe. They're the maker of Flash and all these other products, Photoshop, everything. So we were talking to the president of Macromedia, and he said, look, if you can incorporate Flash, they were just launching Flash, it was the late 90s. If you can incorporate Flash into your product, we will fund you. What did I say? Absolutely. We will do it. Just give us the money. Give us the money. So he said, but I can't lead the round. We're a company. Yeah. We need a top tier venture firm on Silicon Valley to lead the round. But I can introduce you. So it's been a month now, and we are dying. We need capital. Yeah. He walks us in to one of the top VCs on Sand Hill Road, which is where all the VCs are. And I go into this VC.
He had that position in the industry. He was very well known. One call from him, and people would see you.
They would take the meeting. But he went to this meeting with me. And I was like, why is he coming with me? Well, he was coming with me to gauge the VC's reaction, to see if he should introduce me to any other VCs. If this meeting went badly, if this guy shot holes in our business, he's walking away. So we're in a world of pain. I go into this guy. The one thing I learned is you don't show your pain. You don't let them know where you stand. So I go into this meeting and I talk about our product, which was great. And I talk about our launch, which went great. I talked about Viacom and all the other deals we had in the pipeline. But the VC remained stone-faced the entire meeting. No feedback. Nothing. Then at the end of the meeting, the VC says, excuse me, I have to go do something, and walks out of the room with no explanation. I look at the president of Macromedia, Adobe, and he doesn't know what's going on. So we sit there. 10 minutes later, he comes back into the room, and he holds a piece of paper and lays it on the table. And he said, this is your term sheet. I'm going to give you not just $5 million, but $7 million at the valuation you asked for.
Wow.
It was the first meeting. I just met
Wow.
him. We just had one pitch, a half an hour pitch. He was ready to fund me. I was like, what did I do right to get this deal on the table? And it clicked in my head. I had mentioned during our meeting that this was the first company that Macromedia had introduced us to. And that they were going to take us to other VCs. That planted the seed of fear. Like with venture capitalists who know, they're competing for deals. And basically it's fear and greed. And I learned in that moment, you have to make them more afraid of losing the deal than they are of losing their money. If you can do this, you win, right? They're going to give you a term sheet. So I had dreamed of getting a term sheet on my first meeting. I mean, I had been with that other VC for 6 months negotiating. Here I was like on the first meeting getting a term sheet. But I started to think strategically. Now here's where the negotiation begins. I needed the money in the bank yesterday. We were begging our employees. They were working for free. We had, hosting provider. We had to pay all these fees racking up. We are literally on the verge of insolvency. So I needed that money in the bank like at the soonest possible time. At the same time, I couldn't show any desperation. I could not admit that I need this money. So my mind was whirling, and it was literally on the fly. I started to think, wow, he really wants this deal. He's afraid that we're going to walk out the door. So I'm going to use that to get what I want. So basically I said, we don't need $7 million. We only asked for $5 million. I'm taking a position of extreme confidence. Even though $7 million, yes, we would love to have $7 million. I said, we only need $5 million. But I will tell you what, I will compromise with you. I will take $6 million if you can close the deal in 2 weeks. So I acted like I was ready to walk if he wanted to give me $7 million, which to him shocked him. But he was like, we can do the deal. 2 weeks, no problem. Literally, I had his commitment there. So we signed the term sheet, and sure enough, 2 weeks later, we had the money in the bank.
I'm writing notes down, Steve. What I'm doing is I've got about 10 notes here to feed back towards the end. This is brilliant. This is brilliant.
So we closed the deal. And then I rode our lawyers. So you cannot allow lawyers to go at their own. I made sure he was writing his lawyers because I basically said, you can't do this in 2 weeks. We're going to other people. Literally, if you're not on top of your lawyers, we're going to other people. And then I was on top of my lawyer, every day, every minute, as soon as a term would come up, I was on the phone. I was ready, go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I was pushing. I was like, we're going to close this deal. And I honestly believe, as the business person, you have to take charge. You have to be in charge of the First of all, I made sure that in that second round of negotiation, when I went to the second VC, I was in control the whole way. I did not let up control. I was setting the terms. I was driving it. And in the first one, I let them drive it, and I sort of sat back. And whatever happened. I trusted that they would do the right thing. This is not something you want to do if you are going to close a deal and negotiate the deal you want. You have to set the terms you want out front, get all the parties on board, get commitments from them for the dates that you want, not the dates that they want, not the dates that the lawyers want, but the dates that you need. So that was my first real experience doing a deep negotiation, and I learned a lot through the process.
Steve, that was amazing. It was really amazing. So let me play back a few points to you that I kind of picked up. So one was around getting a commercial lawyer on board. So you've got to find a really good commercial lawyer that understands where you should yield, what's a sensible commercial risk, and where you should fight. I would agree with you. I think finding those people, very, very rare. I think that's linked very much to the entrepreneurs got to drive the deal. I remember a situation where I was negotiating a deal. I was very fortunate, like you. I had a very good commercial lawyer. And I wrote out on one page the principles of the deal and the deal breakers. And then he turned it into legal speak. And that was a very similar thing. The entrepreneurs got to drive the deal forward. Something we've talked about before, so just kind of unwrap this a little bit for me as well in your deals. We've talked before a lot about, in fact, you gave me the idea of salespeople often aren't the people you want to negotiate the deal because they're different characteristics. And yet in this situation, you were the entrepreneur, it was your business, and you had to negotiate the deal. Which is your natural preference? Do you prefer to sell or negotiate, or do you like both?
I prefer to sell. I'm somebody who likes to please people, make them happy, get everybody on the same page, get a yes. Negotiation is an entirely different thing. And fortunately, one of my partners is really good at negotiation. So she worked with me. She's much tougher. She holds the bottom line. I will actually, when I say I'm driving it, I'm taking a little too much credit. It's a team effort. So sure. It's a team. And relying on her, she's not good at sales. Like, she's not a natural salesperson, but she is very detail-oriented, very process-oriented. I can tell her what I want, and then I can let her do kind of the tough talk. So it's good cop, bad cop. And I think in negotiation, the salesperson usually is the good cop, and the negotiator usually is the bad cop. And that works really well going back and forth. There are some things where, as the CEO of the company, I just had to take charge and I had to set like basic terms. Yeah. So I had to do that on my own.
Something else that you mentioned, which I think is a really critical point about the people that really have mastered negotiation in these crazy environments where you've got these Hollywood sharks, is confidence. The confidence that comes with the ability to know and say, I'm going to walk away. There are certain terms on this deal that are sacrosanct. If we can't agree to those, I'm walking away and we'll go somewhere else. But you have to mean it, and you clearly meant it. Where does that confidence come from? Where do you find that confidence now? And how do you teach entrepreneurs to build that confidence?
Well, at this period of time, it came from desperation. I had to be confident or I was sunk. My company was sunk. But, I learned to be more and more confident in my negotiation. So this was just the beginning of my career. Now I've negotiated lots of deals. So I had to negotiate a deal with one of the top hedge funds in the world. They're literally like up there in the top three. I won't name the one, but it's the top three in the world. You may be able to guess. So they were venture funding a subsequent company of mine. And I had been going through their head of venture capital. But then at a certain point, he didn't, we had a really good valuation. He didn't feel comfortable signing off the deal. So he bumped it up to the CEO and chairman of the hedge fund, who normally never takes these meetings.
No, exactly.
And I went in with him, and I knew, he was going to either say, just do it or not, because he's not going to argue over pennies, right? To him, it's like a small amount of money, this venture deal, compared to what the billions he's moving around in the hedge fund. So I really, with him, I focused on selling him on the vision. So I sold him on the vision. And then I used the same thing. We were negotiating at the same time with Disney. They were another potential funder and this hedge fund. So I didn't tell, when I negotiate, when I do these deals, I don't want to reveal who the other party is, because sometimes they will collude. They will go behind your back and do a deal.
They'll call them, and both deals might be off. Both deals go away. They haven't gone away at all, but they're colluding. And you're like, what now? I agree with you. Never tell the person who else you're negotiating with. Absolutely.
Never. I have two rules. So never tell who you're negotiating with, and never lie. Never pretend that you have something you don't have. So correct. All I said, so I had to tread a fine line here, because I wanted to let him know that we had a serious other offer on the table, and they kind of want to know who it is, because they always ask. So when I said it, I said one of the largest media companies in the world also wants the deal. And they want the whole deal. So it's either you or them. I didn't want to give them room to actually combine them, So say it's either you or them, and you guys have to make a decision. So saying stuff in just the right way, where you tell them, what's happening. And then I went back to the media company and I said the same thing to them. I went back to Disney and gave them the same story. And, they thought I was bluffing. They actually thought Disney thought I didn't have a hedge fund on the line. So they were they took their time. The hedge fund closed the deal. And so Disney was so upset. They were like really mad when I was like, I told you, you didn't believe me, but I told you.
I think that never lie, and that's linked to the BATNA. If you say you've got an alternative, you need to have a viable alternative that you're prepared to accept to do a deal with. If you're not prepared to do that, don't say it. I don't believe in bluffing. I just don't. I think bluffing's a bad idea. And what you said there was real. It's like Disney misread you. They thought you were bluffing, and you weren't. You had a viable alternative that was real, and you took that deal. I think that's an important point in negotiating.
And a lot of people ask me, well, what if you don't have a backup? What if there are no other parties interested in what you're doing? What if it's the type of deal where you have a product and everybody can buy it? There's no exclusive on this. What do you do? In this case, I learned another thing, and that is you don't want to lie. So what you say is, look, my time is really valuable. We have a lot of other people we are doing business with, and I can't just focus on you in this deal if you're not going to move forward. So I'm telling you, you have to commit within this time frame or we're going to have to move on. And you say it with confidence and you don't insult them. You just say, look, honestly, we only have so many resources. I can't keep putting time into this if it's not going to move forward, if it's not going to close, or if you're not going to give me the terms you want. So this is what I need from you. Are you willing to do it? And when they know you're ready to walk away, even if it's for something that you haven't, other parties that you haven't clearly defined or other obligations you have, that's often enough to get them to take action because you find out whether they're serious in the deal. And at the end of the day, like especially when you're doing corporate sales, which I did a lot of, these things could drag on forever if you let them.
Absolutely.
Like literally VC deals are easy compared to corporate deals are so much harder. Like they'll just these guys are getting paid a salary and it's no big deal to them. They have lots of deals going and they're lawyers. So you've got to take control. You've got to give them deadlines and you've got to give them consequences if they don't meet the deadlines, real consequences. And then you have to live up to those. So the reason I don't lie is because if you say somebody else is going to do a deal by a certain date and it doesn't happen and you come back to them, you've totally blown your credibility.
That's right.
Not to mention it's just immoral. You don't have to be a good business person. You can be perfectly moral, but you can be smart. And so my smartness is you can decide whether you want to do the deal or not. You can pull the plug. Everybody has that power. You don't have to have anybody else, any backup. You can decide the timeline. These are all up to you. It's only up to, but a lot of people don't take control. They don't think they have that power. So,
and we spoke the week about, in that negotiation workbook I've put together, there's a page, a template, which is timelines. And people go, what do you mean timeline? Process and timeline. You lay out the 4 steps, you lay out the milestones, and you lay out the things that have to be achieved by those milestones. And you give it to your counterparty, get them to agree, and both work to those deadlines. I think that's, again, really important. And it's so rare it happens. And yet it's the power of, no, we both agreed to do this in these timeframes. Let's get the deal done. And it holds both of you to account. And it gives you a rhythm to go through with the deal. I think that's really important. Steve.
I have another
learning.
One more learning too. So here's another learning. So later on with that same company, we were doing deals with Warner Brothers, NBC, Turner Broadcasting, all the big media companies. Wow. And, I was doing these deals and I had learned a lot in the process. And when I was doing the deals, I found out that the network executives, the people who actually signed the bottom line, weren't necessarily the most invested in this interactive TV thing. They kind of liked the interactive TV platform. They thought it was cool, but it wasn't going to make a difference on their bottom line. So, but they were the ones who ultimately had to agree to do it and sign off on all the terms we wanted. But what I figured out is in any large organization, like these huge media companies, I might be talking, at the time it was Scott Sassa, the president of NBC. I might be talking to him. But there is something Scott Sassa cares about, and that is his showrunners. And showrunners are the TV producers. They're hit top producers who have a show. And we are talking to people like, the producer of Survivor, the TV show at the time, and other ones like that, who carried a lot of weight. Now, if I found out that if I sold them on the idea that our platform would make their show so much sexier, so much better, so much, more PR worthy and all these different things, that then they would become my champion and they would push the deal through. So where I didn't have leverage, where you don't have leverage, because, I could go to the president of MTV and say, you need to do this in 2 weeks or I'm walking. He would say, okay, walk, at the end of the day. But if I'm sitting there with one of their top showrunners, and that showrunner says, we need to get this done in 2 weeks because I don't want this guy to go work with one of our competing shows on another network. And he only has a limited bandwidth and he's committing to me. I need you to get this done. He would get it done. So find the person in the organization who you have leverage with, who really cares about it, and get them to set the deadlines to the other people in the organization. Or in this case, it was even an outside party. It was like a third-party TV producer. If you can do that, again, then you have leverage to actually drive the process forward.
Clever. Steve, I don't know where to finish, really. There's so much stuff. This has been, truly, I knew you were talented and I know you've done a lot of deals, but the learnings in here are fantastic. And I'll summarize them later on when we edit the episode, but what are your kind of top three? Now that you're a very, very seasoned negotiator, you help entrepreneurs and startup businesses scale. What are the kind of, in the realms of negotiation, the top three things that you would say to someone over a coffee about lessons learned, the things to focus on?
Well, Mike, I think your process actually is the best thing an entrepreneur can get. Like what you've worked out, a lot of the things I'm telling you are people kind of know, but they don't always act on, right? They are things that, I know I should be confident. I know I should, set deadlines. I know I should, get people to play off one another. I know all these things, but they don't often do it. So it's good that they're reminded. It's good that they're shown the power and that they can do it even when they have no leverage, when even there is no timeline. You can artificially create these timelines. These are kind of the things that I am telling you. But honestly, if you're going to negotiate, having a structured process in exactly, Mike, the way you lay out in your new book is golden. It incorporates everything I said, but in a very systematic way, which means you don't have to be a brilliant negotiator. You don't have to be a brilliant, salesperson. You can follow the process and you can get through it simply because you have a structure, and often the other side doesn't. The other side doesn't have a structure, and having that is the biggest weapon you can have, or the biggest tool in your toolkit for getting these deals done.
Fantastic, thank you, Steve. And we both that's one of the key principles that we both agree on is preparation. Have a process, have templates. The prepared mind wins the day because your counterparty will be less prepared. And you'll claim more value the more preparation you do. Steve,
and if you,
Captain Hoff, carry on. No, please carry on.
If I just say, if you look at the master negotiators, they seem like they're doing it off the cuff, but the fact is they've done it so many times, they know it all, right? They're already prepared. They've already thought through it all. So what seems like they're going ad hoc is not the case. That is why your system teaches people how to do it. And once they become masters of it, they can make it look like, just like a sports star makes it look like it's a no-brainer, but they've done that shot 1,000 times or done that play 1,000 times.
Exactly. Steve, Captain Hoff, it's been amazing. Truly amazing. Really, really amazing. There's so much here of value to people that can listen to this. So once again, thank you so much. Where can people find out more about you and your programs?
So if they want to find out, they want to contact me or find out about our entrepreneurial programs, our business programs, we have innovation programs, we have all sorts of stuff, just go to founderspace.com, founderspace.com. And if your listeners want a little thing on venture capital, if they're interested in that, we have a special thing we can offer them. And that is our 10 commandments of raising venture capital. And they can get that by going to founderspace.com/10, TEN. I'm also on LinkedIn, all the other social networks. And if you want my book, Surviving a Startup, just go to survivingastartup.com.
Steve, thank you. Captain Hoff, it's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.